and for future reference. All right, now we have officially started. It's welcome everybody to Advanced Cash Flow. I'm Professor J.R. Dawkins, or Professor J. I'll be leading you guys through this session on advanced cash flow. So we touched on some cash flow. Today we're going to dive deep into the cash flow. So by the end of this session tonight, you will understand the ins and outs of cash flow, what it is, what it isn't, and get a good picture of, like, you know, a good example of what it looks like. Pierre and Roberto and Samuel, you guys all shared some comments in the chat pertaining to what you think about with cash flow. My next question is, some of you have ventured into business, small or large. Some of you have ventured into business. Who here has actually collected money? Like you made a sale. If you made a sale, Mary Elena, you made a sale. Congrats. Who else made a little something? Who sold something so far? Marilena, could you drop? Marilena, what is it that you sold? Was this something for yourself? Were you fundraising? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, me and my mom, I'm not gonna say we're hoarders, but sometimes in our closet we be having stuff that's cute, but we just don't be using it. So once in a while we collect all our stuff that we're not gonna use, and we know we're not gonna use, and we put it in this box, and then during the summertime we do a yard sale, and we just sell our other stuff, and then we split it 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what's up. Ain't nothing wrong with that little yard sale. But I've definitely been there where, you know, we just have stuff that's not getting used. You thought you was gonna use it.
Wait, it's your birthday?
It was. My birthday was this past Saturday. Thank you. So thank you for that example. Yeah, so that was an example of, you know, overall cash flow, right? So you guys bought stuff or got stuff, and then eventually it's like, hey man, let's get rid of it. But instead of just tossing it or whatever, see what we could get for it. Thank you for that example. So we kind of already talked through what you guys know about cash flow. But when it pertains to business, right, specifically, so we understand the overall concept, right? Cash flow is talking about the money coming in and out of the business, right? Why is it important to understand your business's cash flow? What are some reasons that it's important to understand your business's cash flow? Hold on. I saw Marilena's hand.
I'll let her go first.
Okay, it's important to know the cash flow because you ever seeing shows where people embezzle money from the company? So you should know what's coming in, and also it's also important because number one, somebody can be stealing from you. Number two, a lot of the money that is being raised can be put back into the company, making it a better company. And making a better company does bring a bigger cash flow. So it's like an investment.
Yeah. So what I got from that was transparency in what money is coming in and how it's being used. So that way you're fully aware and people you're not losing money, right? You don't want people pocketing money. If you're following the cash flow well, you know, you'll be able to catch that. Roberto. You're on mute if you're talking, or I'm not hearing you. Well, you're not on mute, but it looks like your mic's not working.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you go.
All right, so I'd say it's important to measure cash flow mainly for accounting purposes and keeping the books. But then it's also important so you can measure your margins and your profit so that you can invest in bigger things. like you know like how much money you have to like do that. So yeah.
Absolutely. So accounting, yes. Thank you for throwing that word in there, right? So, hey, Miss C, definitely want to have your books straight, right? While you are on the smaller side of a business, the IRS might not mess with you much, but yeah, when the cash starts flowing, and let's say speaking positively, your business is growing, they're gonna come check you, say, hey, we need to see what the revenue look like. Did you pay your taxes? Did you pay, us everything that you owed us? But then also you want to have your cash flow tight so that you're always covering your expenses and you can make wise decisions. Go ahead, Prince.
As Roberto say, cash flow is important because it helps determine the amount of revenue you have. You have to pay your workers. You want to know you want to know what plans you want to make for your financial obligation in the future, and also for your debit purchases that you have to do. If that makes sense.
hmm So what I'm hearing is one, planning, right? You can, to do a solid planning. Yes, you definitely want to understand your cash flow so you could plan to say, hey, I could afford to get an employee or two because we have X amount of money every month, right? And we're saving X amount or we have X amount available. Yes, so definitely you want to know your cash flow so you could plan accordingly. Plan your purchases, right? So like that's what I'm hearing. Like cash flow is important so that you can plan. And you want to plan wisely. So you want to know, how much do I have to spend if I'm going to do marketing? Should I spend 1,000? Do I have 1,000 to spend, or am I going to blow my budget and not be able to pay my bills? So definitely, all great answers. Thank you all for participating. So what we're going to jump into right now is one of my favorite videos. I'll be honest, one of my favorite videos that talks about cash flow. There's tons of videos that you could find, but I like this one because it has illustrations. It's easy to follow, and I think it does a great job at highlighting some key points. So I'll pause it along the way so that those of you that are taking notes can take notes. And if anyone has any questions, so I'll kind of pause it. It breaks it down into a couple of different steps. So I'll just basically try to pause it after each step it goes over. And let me know if you hear it or if you don't.
Cash flow refers to the movement of cash into or out of an account, a business, or an investment. When cash inflows exceed outflows, this is generally considered to be a sign of good financial health, both for individuals and companies. Ed makes his living running Ed's Carpets. For Ed, cash flow is essential to the survival of his business as well as his personal finances. Having ample cash on hand ensures that Ed can pay his employees, his creditors, and himself on time, keeping the business afloat. The same goes for Ed. He needs enough cash in his personal bank account to pay for his house, his car, and other personal expenses. Whether we are talking about Ed or his business, there are generally three types of cash flows. 1. Operational cash flows refer to cash received or spent as a result of a company.
So I'll pause there. So right at the top, you all kind of contributed to the first part that they mentioned, right? The cash, having more cash coming in than cash going out is the goal of a successful business. And doing that allows you to, like they said, as you said, have employees, pay your creditors. And what they mean by that is, maybe you have a credit card that you use for business, which is not a bad thing if you use it wisely. So you might put 500 a month on your credit card to pay for certain expenses. You get your money from your customers or your business, you pay that card off. And then you also want to be able to pay yourself. Go ahead, Prince, you have a question?
Yes. How would cash flow be different for nonprofit businesses or nonprofit institutions?
the cash flow is similar. It's just the way that the nonprofit gets the cash, right? So with a nonprofit, they're not like selling items consistently to like just make money. Nonprofits primarily get their cash through fundraising, through supporters, sponsors, versus having a product. So like you might sell t-shirts. So if you're selling t-shirts and hats and things like that, you're not a nonprofit because you're selling a product and taking money for that product, or giving a service and taking money for that service. So it's really, the difference is how they get the money. But a nonprofit like S.O.A.R, we still have to manage our cash flow. So we have to know that, do we apply for these enough grants for the year? Which ones do we get accepted into? Are they paying out? When are they paying out? Can we pay for, what are our expenses that we have to pay every month? Do we pay the website monthly or yearly? So cash flow is still the same once it's just a matter of how it's coming in. Cool. All right, so I paused this so you guys also had a time to take this note down if you wanted to write this down. So this is the first form of cash flow that they're about to jump into, operational cash flows.
Company's business activities. For example, a business like Ed's Carpets brings in cash by selling carpets and sends cash out to pay employees and suppliers. Similarly, Ed pays himself a salary, providing cash flow to his personal account. Cash will flow out to pay for his expenses such as food and housing. 2. Investment cash.
All right, so I'll pause there. So the operational cash flows literally is, it's what you want from your business, right? You want to be able to operate your business, which means you need to be able to pay for the things that your business needs. If you need employees, you need enough cash flow to afford to pay people. But maybe you're working by yourself and all you really need is a website and some services. So you still need enough money to pay for those things. And that will be considered part of your business operation. And also paying yourself, right? So you want to make money. So that's also part of your business operation. Go ahead, Prince.
How does taxes and certain forms they have to fill out go into it?
So that's going to be an expense. So you do, in the big picture, you want to know, you could look up the tax rates or talk to a CPA and they'll advise you based on your business how much you should set aside. So they might say, hey, set aside 30% of everything you make every month. And then at the end of the year, you file your taxes with the government, with the state and the federal government, and then you would submit to them your revenue, and then they will finalize the amount that you owe in taxes and you pay it. So depending on how long you're in business, if you're, your first year is kind of going to be a guesstimate. So CPA might just say, hey, throw 30% of everything into a savings account for tax season. But the more you're in business and if you work with the same certified tax professional, they'll help you estimate like what you should be putting aside based on your revenue.
Thank you.
No problem. That's a great question. Definitely want to keep the taxes in mind, because that comes back to bite people if they don't think about it. Because what you don't want to do is, if you are making money, you don't want to just pay yourself, pay employees, pay services, and have nothing left for taxes. So that should also go into consideration when you're setting your price as well. So think about that. And we'll talk more about setting price for products towards the end of this class, but it's good to keep in mind. So great question.
2. Investment cash flows refer to cash received or spent through investing activities. Basically, the purchasing and selling of assets that will help grow the business, or in the case of Ed, assets that will help increase his net worth. 3. Finance.
All right. So they go pretty quickly through that. So investment cash flows. Does everyone understand what that means? Anyone have any questions on what they mean by investment cash flows? Go ahead, Prince.
I do have a question about investment cash flow. So, when someone's investing in a business and they give like a certain amount, and say that the investment ends up being something that's good, and they both make a profit off of it. But let's say that a few months later it ends up doing really bad, or they will have to stop the business altogether. How would investment cash flow play into that? I'm not sure if I'm making this too confusing.
No, that's fine. I think you're thinking more so from a personal standpoint, but from a business standpoint, investment cash flow could look like the business getting a high interest savings account versus just having a regular savings account. So a regular savings account is gonna not give you much interest on your money. A high yield savings account right now will give you 4% back on your money. So you put the money in that savings account and you're gonna earn interest every month, right? You could also the business can also invest in stocks in the stock market, which is gonna give a greater return. But you could also invest in different ways. Like one example would be like flipping houses. So some businesses, some people do this as part of their business. They buy a house and then they might fix it up and flip it. And some businesses do this in addition. That's just one example, but the idea is you're putting the money into something that's gonna grow. For your example with investing, if it goes down, let's say the business did put money into stocks. They took $5,000, say, hey, this is great. We have $5,000 left over. Let's put it into stock market. With that, it's a long-term investment. So you wouldn't look at it like, let's say this month is up, next month is down. Really with stocks, that kind of investment, you're just leaving for the long term. So far, if your money is in, let's say, the stock market for 5 years, it's going to average a positive return. So I hope that helps with what you're asking.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. So the cash that will be received from that, the stock market pays dividends depending on the stocks you get. So you could be earning dividends, which is kind of a form of interest. So when companies do really good, they give back some of the profit to their shareholders. So a company like Ford Motor Company, right? They have a really good quarter. They'll say, hey, we're going to give back to everyone that bought stock in Ford. So the more stock you have, the more dividend you'll get paid out. So that's on top of the stock performing well. Yeah, so it could be anything. So investing could be any legal purchase that grows in value while you have that asset. Another example actually could be if you purchase a building for your business to operate. Let's say you have a business and you buy a building and that's your headquarters. That building over time, that property should grow in value. So you might have paid $100,000. 5 years later, that same property you paid $100,000 for might be worth $150,000, $200,000. That growth in the value is something your business could actually utilize if it needed to. It could borrow money from that. All right, the third one.
Financing cash flows refer to cash received through debt or paid out as debt repayments.
I'll pause that because I know it goes fast. So basically, these are, the third way of getting cash in, right? They're talking about, credit cards, loans, things like that.
Or paid out as debt repayments. For a company, issuing stock, paying down debt, and repurchasing shares would count as part of financing cash flows. For Ed, financing cash flows include any cash coming from loans or other types of debt, as well as payments going to pay down debts. If Ed's business comes up short on cash and is unable to pay its obligations, it will experience a cash flow crunch. To avoid insolvency, Ed will have to arrange some type of financing or bridge loan. A similar situation in Ed's personal accounts would also have disastrous effects that could lead to personal bankruptcy if the cash flow crunch persisted. For this reason, it is important that businesses and individuals manage their cash flow carefully and set aside emergency reserves to cushion any unexpected events.
All right, so that last part. So you guys covered a lot of this too, right? Because you mentioned having cash flow for future expenses, right? So having a cash reserve, right? So this is saying you paid your business expenses, whatever your operating costs are. You paid yourself. You might have put money aside into a high yield savings account. So that savings account could be your reserve, meaning, hey, there's a certain amount of money. You could say, let's say 5% of everything that's made is just going into a savings account, or you could make 100%, but you want to have some kind of plan where there's money that's going into an account that's not being touched for any reason other than complete emergency. An emergency might be something like the pandemic, right? So in 2020, a lot of businesses had to shut down, and businesses that did not have reserves couldn't afford to pay the lease on the buildings they had, or they couldn't afford to pay employees. You know, they couldn't afford to pay themselves, right? There was all kinds of things that happened where if you didn't have cash reserves, you were out. Yes, it was a pandemic, so the government did step in and provided certain bailouts and money for people. But in short-term cash crunches like this, let's say, you know, your business does good in one season, but usually in another season, it doesn't do good. You want to have those reserves available. Can anyone guess? And actually, before I have you guys guess, let me get the updated number, because when I was working at this place, the amount was a little different. They've been spending it. All right. Can anyone guess how much money Apple, right? Apple computer, iPhone, right? How much money do you guys think Apple has in reserves as of last year? You could drop your number, drop your guess in the chat. No, you gotta put a number, Jada. Nice try. Throw a number in there. But you're on the right track. Okay, Berto, 50 bill. Prince, 135 million. Jada, 30 billion. Everybody didn't answer yet. Everybody throw a number in it. Take a guess. Samuel with the precise 5,600,000. All right. So the closest was Roberto for 2022. Apple has $48 billion in cash reserves. Over time, they've been spending, like I forgot the most I think they had was like 200 billion or something crazy. So Apple is one example of a company that is very, very disciplined in applying this cash reserve mentality. You have other companies like Netflix who operates at a deficit pretty much at all times. Then a company like Apple who, with 50 billion in cash reserve, you know, they could weather the storm, right? They could weather a pandemic and still afford to pay their employees, right? They could, you know, they could go through some things and still be functional, right? And I throw it out there because it always shocked me. When I worked at Apple, they had like 200 billion in cash reserves, and the amount kept growing. I think it might have been even a little more than that. And people would be like, what are you going to do with all this cash? But having reserves is not a bad thing. It's a great thing, actually. So any questions about the video? Did any questions come up from the video on the 3 types of cash flow? Prince?
Are reserves different for public and private company, or it's just basically the same thing?
Same thing. Same thing. I mean, they have a pile of cash that's sitting, and it's not owed to anyone, right? So this is their bills are being paid, whatever debts they have are being paid, expenses are being paid, employees are being paid, everything's being paid, and then they have this pile of money over here. So it'll be the
I have
same
another
thing for you
also.
and for S.O.A.R. Sure, go ahead.
My second question is, during bankruptcy, doesn't a public company get bailed out sometimes, or is it just an entirely different thing?
So you're speaking specifically about a publicly traded company, right? Yeah, so
Yes.
for publicly traded companies, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So the high level, how they kind of decide whether they're going to build them out or not, usually is an evaluation of how much impact will the fall of this company have on the industry. So they'll look at the value and let's say how many customers they have. So like when recently, right, with Silicon Valley Bank and now Chase has just acquired First Republic Bank, they're looking at it like, okay, how many clients does this bank have, or how much of an impact is this to the industry? Should we bail them out? Sometimes what they try to do is to get peers to bail them out. So when Apple was struggling, the government went to Microsoft and said, hey, if Apple fails, you'll be a monopoly. So you have to bail them out so that you're not a monopoly. So Microsoft wrote a check and gave Apple $10 million to cover, their expenses at the time. So it really depends on the situation. Sometimes you have things like that where it's like the government might be like, hey, you are if they die, you're the only one. So you have to help them. And other times the government themselves might step in and provide a bailout. Samuel?
Thank-
No
I was
problem.
gonna ask if I could go for a moment. I need to help my mom with laundry.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions pertaining to cash flow? Good for now. All right. Okay, these are some summary slides. You guys are on point. All right. All right. So can anyone remind me what operational cash flows refers to? Quick review.
I think operational cash flow was the amount of money coming in the company.
You broke up a little bit. You said the amount of money for.
The amount of money, or I would say the revenue of the money coming in and out of the company.
So it's coming in based on the business activities, the operational cash flow, and it's considering money coming in based on business. And Roberto, go ahead. Were you gonna add to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say like operational cash flow, isn't that just like cash flow that comes into like operations and like just like selling and like stuff like that?
Yes. So cash flow coming in based on the business activity. So yes, it could be your sales, it could be your fundraising, and the money out from the operational expenses is covering what you need to function as well, employees or websites, platforms, marketing. Investment cash flow. Wants to share what this refers to? Yeah, Marilena. Or maybe she dropped a hand. Did you drop your hand, Marilena?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I was asking who wanted to share what investment cash flow refers to.
Oh, okay. Investment cash flow is like, okay, so we already talked about like receiving it in, but what I was saying is like, let's say you make like 600,000, so you already have to pay yourself. Obviously, you got to pay yourself, the employees, and the creditors, and with the leftover money, I think that you should put back into the business. Like, let's say your business is selling lipsticks. Now let's say you have 40,000 to make more make more lipsticks that are selling. So now, just investing in those lipsticks, you can get more money since the popularity of the product.
Gotcha. Okay. It's a little different. I get where you're going with that, but the investment cash flow is a little bit different from that. So you're speaking about specifically investing back into your business, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Roberto, I think you were second.
So investment cash flow, I'd say it's like investing in sort of like assets that can either like compound positively or like compound negatively. That can be like positive or negative for your company or something.
Right. So yes. So the investment cash flow refers to any profits that you're getting from what you invested in. So you invested in stocks, you open a CD or certificate of deposit in a bank, and you're getting interest on that will be investment cash flow. Prince?
You can also say that investment cash flow is inflow or outflow of the cash that the company has reserved for long-term investments.
Maybe. I don't know if I was out of. I get what you're saying, but it's not that it's reserved for long-term investments. So this would be active investments. So investment cash flow would really only be referring to the in the inflow cash from investments. So if you already put this money into an investment like stocks or a high interest savings, what you make off of that is now your investment cash flow. A lot of companies do like insurance policies. And actually banks, that's how they make their money. So banks make money by investing the cash that's deposited into the bank into insurance policies, and then they get 7, 8, 10% back on that money. That's their investment cash flow. So basically, the more deposits they have, the more cash flow that they have. So for your business, investment cash flow would look like, you know, you make $500. Sorry, you have $500 left over. You invest that $500. Now you're getting $5 a month interest on that $500. So that $5 a month would be investment cash flow. Of course, the more you invest and the better the investment, the more you're going to be making on a monthly or quarterly basis. But that's the idea behind investment cash flow. So what's coming in from what you invested in as a business. And then the third one, financing cash flows. Anyone remember this one?
Wait, the audio cut out.
I was asking if anyone remembers the financing cash flow.
Isn't it loans that you'll be taking or
Yep.
something like that? Okay.
So
it was
it's loans, lines of credit that you might use to cover expenses or needs. So these are the main three types. I know it's not as exciting as everything else, but it's super important for you guys to really understand this because it's foundational to running your business and growing your business. You want to just know what these are so that way as you're growing and you're talking to whoever, banks, lenders, you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. But yeah, the financing could be you might need a loan to start your business, right? Depending on what you're doing. Maybe, you need to get a car for your business. So as opposed to you getting it personally, if it's for your business specifically, you would, finance the car under your business and take out auto loan or something to get your vehicle. Maybe you want to do a food truck. Maybe you want to get something to sell items wherever you park, right? So you might get a truck and that's your business vehicle. You'll take out a loan, get that vehicle. And that's how you'll be able to afford something that you don't actually have the physical cash for. Yes. Yeah. Go ahead, Prince.
I know that certain banks offer uh business credit cards. How are they different from regular credit cards?
That is an excellent question. So the primary difference, let me actually show you guys some of the differences. Gonna stop sharing here. Gonna switch. So you have something called a business profile. So when you get a business, you're gonna register your business with the federal government, the IRS, and you're gonna register the business with the state. When you do that, your business gets its own identification number. So the same way you have a social security number that you always have to use, like if you're opening up a bank account, if you're buying a car, if you're doing anything with finances, they're like, well, we're gonna need your social. So for a business, the business identification for the government and for finances and everything is called an EIN number. So let's say a website like American Express, they have a personal tab and then they have a business tab. If you click on business, now it's all about business cards, corporate programs, business checking. If you look at the business cards, what's going to happen is, as opposed to it just saying your name on it, it'll also have the business's name on it as well. And the reason they do that is because the business is going to build its own credit. So for you to get a business card, you do need to have the EIN number, which you get for free at irs.gov, that identifies your business, right? Means that it's real. And then when you fill out the information for the application here, they're going to ask you, boom, what's your business name? What is your business address? Your business address could be your home or wherever. So they're going to ask you questions specifically about your business versus it being like, hey, what's your home address, right? They're going to start off asking you primarily about your business. And then, sorry, go ahead. I'll pause there. Prince?
You say that for the business cards, basically create your own credit. I don't know what you mean by that.
The business will be creating its own credit. So you guys remember when you guys went over the credit, wait, you guys didn't do that. On Thursday, you're gonna dive into credit. So I'm getting ahead of it a little bit, but you have, actually Tamara talked to you guys about credit and fundamentals. So you personally have your own credit score that's gonna follow you based on your social security number, right? So remember when Tamara talked about your credit score ranging from 350 to was it 350 to 850? There's a similar scale for businesses. So as a business, they also track how does the business pay on time, how much revenue does the business make, so on and so forth. So they have that same version for businesses as well. By and large, it's tracked under what's called a DUNS number. Does that answer the question, Prince?
Yes, I understand.
Okay. Roberto.
Oh, you kind of answered my question, but I was just like wondering, like, is the entire the entire reason for like a business card for like credit card or like a personal one just to like build credit?
So partially, but the biggest thing is this: you don't want your business credit or your business to, if you could avoid it, you want to avoid it damaging your personal credit. So I'll give you an example. If you only have one personal credit card, or let's say multiple personal credit cards, right? And they're under your name, right? So these cards, you went to the bank, you gave them your social. Now, Roberto Schulster Jr. has 3 credit cards with Chase. And you're like, oh, I'm going to start a business. And you use your Chase credit card, you swipe, 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 start your business. Let's say business is slow and your cards are maxed out. That's going to hit your personal credit now as like, man, this guy used up all his credit. And let's say you're late on a payment because business is slow. That's going to hit your personal credit. Versus when you have a business credit card, there's some kind of separation there for a time being. So if you use a business credit card for those same purchases to start your business, get your products, if it's maxed out, American Express doesn't put that on your personal credit history. So your personal credit score will still stay whatever it is, right? It'll still be, let's say 700, while your business is just going through, what it's going through. So ideally, you do want to have separation between your business finances and your personal finances for that reason. Did that answer it?
Yeah, it answered my question. I kind of have like a new question now. It's kind of like related to like credit and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you know that like starting a business would take like $50,000 and you can max out your credit card for like $50,000, but you can also make that money back, can you just like do a business for free then? Like essentially?
Well, I wouldn't say for free, but this goes into your planning, your strategy doc and everything. So you would want to plan and say, okay, like if I spend this 50,000, and how am I making this back and over what period of time? So am I estimating I'll be making $100 a month? So it's going to take me a long time to pay that 50,000 back. Am I going to be making $1,000 a month, 5,000? And you do that by doing some estimations based on what you're trying to sell, how much you're trying to sell it. Have you sold any of it before?
Yes.
But a lot of businesses do that. They'll take out a business loan to start their business.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem. Maria Elena?
My question was like, for business cards, do you have to be making a certain amount of money? Because like, let's say for example, it's like a small business and like it's like at home you're doing the business. What like is that still? Because I remember earlier you were saying to check if it's a real business. So what would be considered a real business?
Oh, anything that you're doing that you're providing a service or selling a product is a real business. And to start, they do look at your personal credit to start. So they do want to see that you have a decent credit score. Usually you want to be at 680 and up to start. So they're going to look at your personal credit score, see if you have any personal income, and then they're going to give you a credit limit for the business side.
Oh, okay.
At least that's how American Express operates. So they're going to look at your personal credit. Do you have income? So even if you just have a part-time job somewhere, right? And it's like, okay, this person has a good credit history. They've been paying their stuff on time. We'll give them a chance. Now, another route to go is like, I think we mentioned like a business loan. So a credit card is one thing, a loan is another thing, but they're both ways of getting cash that you don't have to start your business, let's say, or to grow your business. Getting a loan is a little bit different. They might ask you for more information, more proof of your salary and things like that. They might even ask to see your business plan because they want to know, has this person thought it out? They're asking to borrow $10,000. How are they going to pay it back? And then there's also grants for first-time business starters, for small businesses. Depending on the kind of business you're trying to do, they might be grants where they're like, you send us your business plan, and S.O.A.R does a lot of this. So S.O.A.R applies for a lot of grants. There's also grants for profit too. But S.O.A.R, what we do is we look for grants that are funding like education nonprofits. So then we go to these grants and say, hey, here's how we're educating youth. Here's what we're teaching them. Here's what they learn. Here's our goals. Here's how many students we want to reach. Here's how many students we have reached already, right? And then based on the information, they might say, okay, SOAR, we see that you have a plan. We see that you actually did this. We'll award you the grant. And the grant value could range. So that's another way too, is actually looking for grants. The difference with grants are, you don't have to pay grants back. A grant is literally an investment in you because they believe in what you're doing. And they could be anybody, it could be the government program, it could be a company. Cool. All right, so we are going to dive into some examples of cash flow so that we get a good look at it. Hold on, let me get back to my slides. We are going to break soon, so we could get a quick break in before we get into the depths of cash flow. So we're going to go through some examples so you guys can ask more questions, see some examples of cash flow. I could even share some of my cash flow. But a wise person once said, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is reality. Okay, Siri, thanks. So this statement is really just kind of nailed the point that, you know, cash is king. You really want to understand how much cash you have, what your cash flow is, because revenue is money that you make before you pay your expenses, right? To get a profit, it can be very challenging because there's a lot of things that happen from the time you make the sale to the time you pay all your expenses. So just a quote to end the session. We're going to go on a quick break. Let's do 10 minutes. So I will see you all back at 7:32. So we'll be back at 7:32, 10 minutes.
See with my eyes, and they know it's alright. I feel alive when I'm in it inside. All the stress in my pride, I just set it aside. I talk to God when I'm walking outside. What I see with my eyes, and they know it's alright. I feel alive when I'm in it inside. All the stress in my pride, I just set it aside. Certain things been hurting me, but
burned by many persons, getting worse. This one is third degree. Looked up to the sky and asked the Lord to take this hurt from me. Voice came off the breeze, said, what is purpose really worth to me? I know that the doctor's good cause I survived the surgery. Made a table for me, demons curse you out of courtesy. That's right. They tempt you with the fame and competition. That ain't life. What's the compensation for your soul, man? What's the price? I did it right. I couldn't be a slave to capital. That's not a shot at capital. Departed like DiCaprio. I'm nuts like some pistachios. I'm stunning like my daddy though. Sometimes I feel like months. I don't hear nothing from my daddy though. So even when you're silent, give me strength to still believe. I only know the wind because the way it moves the leaves. And so I know you're present cause the way you move in me. Reminded that you love me every time I feel the breeze. Jesus.
I talk to God when I'm walking outside. What I see with my eyes, let me know it's alright. I feel love when I'm in it inside. All the stress and my pride, I just set it aside. I talk to God when I'm walking outside. What I see with my eyes, let me know it's alright. I feel love when I'm in it inside. All the stress and my pride, I just set it aside.
You got my back, even when I'm back to back sliding. Know you gon' slide on my enemies, leave them burning in fire. And when the lies get the best of me and I'm on my high horse, know that you'll provide me with ketamine. What's this metaphor for? I got beside myself yesterday, so I turned to the left. I asked him what he's reflecting on, but he mocked me in jest. And I just say that to say I know you can fight with your flesh. Now I know what it's like when your brain is fighting the rest. But you just fight at your best and put your baby in basket. Then send that child down the Nile and then you battle denial. The Savior told me it's okay if I get sad for a while. Sometimes it's evil to laugh, sometimes it's tragic to smile. I said, but why cry when your friend died if you gon' resurrect him? He said the promise of heaven don't take away the depression. He said now take what I said, repeat it and make it a blessing. Make sure the way that you say it reflect the weight of the lesson.
I talk to God when I'm walking outside. What I see with my eyes, let me know it's alright. I feel love when I'm in it inside. All the stress and my pride, I just set it aside. I talk to God when I'm walking outside. What I see with my eyes, let me know it's alright. I feel love when I'm in it inside. All the stress and my pride, I just set it aside. I talk to God when I'm walking outside. What I see with my eyes, let me know it's alright. I feel love when I'm in it inside. All the stress and my pride, I just set it aside. I talk to God when I'm walking outside. What I see with my eyes, let me know it's alright. I feel alive when I'm feeling inside. All the stress in my pride, I just set it aside.
Yeah. Hey. Aye. Is that the equipment? That's the canvas. She love looking in his brown eyes, yeah. They been dancing on the cloud nine, yeah. He been keeping her up all night, yeah. Phone cuffing, it been long time, yeah. He be wondering if she lies, yeah. She be hoping that he keep it 100. He been looking for a wife like, yeah. She been praying that he upright, yeah. She follow God, that's a plus, right, yeah. He look into her eyes, heard it right, yeah. The sound of forever, him and her together. They both with the same questions, they be screaming out. Tell me, do you love me, you want me, keep me, here's my hand, just bring me closer. My heart is open, this ring is closure. But baby, don't fail me, baby, don't fail me. Baby, don't fail me, baby, don't fail me. Baby, don't fail me, baby, don't fail me, yeah. Divorces at a high rate, get together just to migrate. High stakes. Many couples lose faith in the mind state. That's why we keep a circle round, got the ring gang. It's a whole lot of chasing this. Have grace. Stay away from face painters. That's fake. And tell me what's your foundation? Is that safe? Either sand or your pavement. Which way? Gotta hustle for the change in you. Give space. This is God in the church, ain't it? So don't play. Better keep up the pace in this race. Not many have been made for this. Some say this the beginning. Family be the key in it. Let go and be free in it. Together our goals, our flaws, our losses. Our soul, pray, push, go. Tell me, do you love me, you want me, keep me, here's my hand, just bring me closer. My heart is open, this ring is closure. But baby, don't fail me, baby, don't fail me. Baby, don't fail me, baby, don't fail me. Baby, don't fail me, baby, don't feel me, yeah, yeah.
5 de Mayo. Yeah, yeah. My shorty bad like Shakira. Ooh. I told her look in the mirror. Yeah. Don't need a license to carry. I do not let them sit near. Nah. She got a heart that's so pure. Yeah. Better hope nothing occur. Nada. Better hope nothing occur. Nada. Better hope nothing occur. My shorty bad like Shakira. Ooh. I told her look in the mirror. Yeah. Don't need a license to carry. Nah. I do not let them sit near. Nah. She got a heart that's so pure. Yeah. Better hope nothing occur. Yeah. Better hope nothing occur. Nada. Better hope nothing occur. Better hope nothing occur. Nah. Playing to feel like Dominicans. I was allergic to cinnamon. Then I found she was a synonym. I love be sweeter than cinnamon. Ooh. Walk with the 3 like Adidas. My mama says she a keeper. Yeah. You'll understand if you meet her. If it's a problem, we solving it. This is that new song of Solomon. Curving the shorties that's modeling. I don't know why they be bothering. Why? I don't know why they be bothering. Why? Been about God from the start. Weather the storm like an art. You cannot tear us apart. My shorty bad like Shakira. Ooh. I told her look in the mirror. Yeah. Don't need a license to carry. Nah. I do not let them sit near. Nah. She got a heart that's so pure. I like that. Better hope nothing occur. Nah. Better hope nothing occur. Nada. Better hope nothing occur. Ooh. My shorty bad like Shakira. Ooh. I told her look in the mirror. Yeah. Don't need a license to carry. Nah. I do not let them sit near. Nah. She got a heart that's so pure. I like that. Better hope nothing occur. Nah. Better hope nothing occur. Nada. Better hope nothing occur.
Cannonballs off of the boat. You make Crush Monday a joke. Misfit on all of my clothes. Rose in my mouth when I dance. At times we talk with our hands. Yeah. My mom is on Instagram. Really? I don't need any more friends. You get my email address. I throw it right in the spam. Hey. I hope I don't see you again. My girl is more than my friend. Guilt-free sex for the win. Wow, that's inappropriate. But I waited for marriage, I'm good though. I'm good though. This the verse to get your album kicked out of bookstores. Stop. It's way too soon.
Welcome back, everybody. 7:32. So we're gonna jump into this next portion here. We're looking to give some examples of cash flow, walk through some examples here, so that way we can close out having, decent foundation. As always, though, got to drop the plug for the Google Classroom. So if any of you have any questions, make sure you check out the Google Classroom. So I'll walk through some of what we have in Google Classroom towards the end, but basically it just goes into further detail about what we talked about tonight. Actually, have you guys been checking that out? The Google Class? Now I'm getting tongue-tied.
I got a question. Like for the fundamental courses, I know that we didn't have to submit any assignments as long as like we always talked about in class. But for the advancement, do we have to submit assignments, or is it going to be the same?
It's going to be the same. I'm thinking in the future of doing assignments, but trying to be mindful that you guys are already in school. So the main thing for advanced is going to be, if you're on the business track, creating your business presentation. So the business presentation should walk us through as if you are, trying to pitch us as an investor to your business. So we should learn what your business is about, why you started it, what you do, what do you sell, how can we buy it, what your service is. And that should be in a presentation like Google Slides or PowerPoint. If you're on the research track, then you would need to submit a research paper. So those are the two mandatory items for advanced.
JR, really quickly, I'm sorry,
Yep.
Just to interject here. So you're either going to do the presentation based on what you guys started working on in the fundamentals track. So it's either going to be, as Professor JR already said, the business presentation or the guided research presentation, not a paper. It's just a presentation, slideshow. Yeah, just a few slides. Again, if you guys, you guys get emails every Tuesday and Thursday reminding you of the class. That information is in that same email further down in the email. So if you have questions, refer to the emails that we send you guys every Tuesday and Thursday, because it's in there and it tells you specifically what you guys need to have by the end of this series, which will be your presentation. And there's no maximum, but there is a minimum of 3 pages of presentation. That's slideshow. As far as the resume, that is also required, and everyone has to have a resume built, which we will go over that in class. And then you all will build, if you don't already have one, you will build a resume as well. So those are the 2 mandatory projects that are going to be due at the end of this series. Again, this is advanced, so it's a little bit, we step it up a little bit more for that. But no, it's not due until the end of the series. But again, if you have questions, there are the instructions in the emails that we send you Tuesdays and Thursdays. When we remind you about the class, it's in that same email. Sorry, Jay, I just wanted to clarify that.
No worries. That was perfect. And in addition, we have the office hours. So tomorrow, if you guys look through the email, you're like, hey, I'm not clear on this part, we do have the office hours on Wednesday. So definitely feel free to jump in there for any deeper questions on that. But just want to quickly show the advanced. If anyone's not in this Google class, you didn't get access, please let me know. But you have the cash flow section here where, there's some information on what is cash flow, tips for improving it, and cash flow statements. So these are resources you guys can just save for whenever it applies. I know sometimes things make a lot more sense when you're actually using it, right? Versus just learning about it from a high level. But yeah, these are really good. Like, they really go through step by step. All right. Okay. Back to the slideshow. All right, so yeah, so for the most part, you guys, we talked about bookkeeping a little bit, right? Staying on top of it, why it's important to do that. Cash flow statements. Have any of you seen a cash flow statement before or know what it is?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so Pierre, what is a cash flow statement? What do you understand as a cash flow statement?
A cash flow statement. Usually, like, how should I explain it? When some people using cash flow statement, think of it as, some people use Google. I think it was Google Sheet for it. It was a way to calculate your revenue, how much you make, and Google Sheets would try to calculate it for you and to see how much money that you can save up, or how much money you need for certain things. If that makes sense, because I
Yeah.
use
How
Google
much
Sheets for that.
how much money's coming in? Where does the money need to go? Where should it be going, and then what's left? Yeah. Roberto, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, basically just like, isn't it that like that big book of like all those like really complicated like numbers? But like it's just like stating like the like how they're making money, and then like where they're losing money, like the liabilities, and then like overall it's just like they're like accumulated this money.
Yeah. Both great answers. And it only gets complicated, I guess. It's a good thing if it gets complicated. That means you're doing a lot of business. But it could be kind of simple, right? So in this example here, like you said, there's the income. So on top here, like, hey, this is what's coming in. There's additions to the cash. So these are things you could claim, like the depreciation of something you might own. So maybe you own, let's say you do t-shirts and you bought this really expensive t-shirt they call it heating press. These things could cost thousands of dollars, right? Let's say you invested $10,000 in one. Increase in accounts payable, and then there's the subtractions, right? So this is tracking what's coming in, what money do you owe, right? What expenses do you have, right? So increase in inventory, right? So that meant, hey, I had to spend more money in getting my product. So if you're, again, using the t-shirts example, increase in inventory means, last month I had 50 t-shirts, I sold out, I had no more t-shirts. And I have a bunch of people waiting for t-shirts. So now maybe I'm gonna buy 200 t-shirts, right? So this is saying, all right, I'm gonna spend that money to get that product to now hopefully sell it, right? Purchase of equipment, right? Notes payable. So, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to go off that slide. But this is one example of a cash flow statement. Depending on your business, it's gonna look a little bit different. You might not have this many lines, right? It might be very simple to start with. And like I said, the more complicated it gets, that means maybe you're doing good. You don't have to only do it by yourself. Pierre, you mentioned Google Sheets. There's also applications like QuickBooks. QuickBooks is a very common applications that businesses use. What's cool about QuickBooks and applications like it is you could actually connect the software to your bank account, to your business bank account. So that way it can automatically track what's happening, right? And if, let's say you have your one bank account, this is where the money from customers goes into, and this is where you pay your bills from, QuickBooks can really keep track of that very easily for you. So that way you can send it to your tax person and they could do the accounting of all of that. This is one example, but any questions on what we're seeing here? Any questions about this example or other thoughts? Good for now. All right, so we're gonna slide into another video that's gonna break this down a little bit more. Okay. I'm not gonna go over the whole thing. This resource is on the Google Class. I'm just gonna go over the first few minutes here and then we're gonna talk about it. Oops, sorry.
Hey, Aiden from Bench Accounting here. Today we're going to talk about cash flow statements. Cash flow is the lifeblood of every business. Even fancy venture-backed startups live or die by their cash flow. And if you're asking, how do you measure cash flow? The answer is with a cash flow statement. In this video, we'll walk you through everything you need to know about cash flow. We'll share a few handy tips on how you can better manage your cash flow, how to create a statement, and how to use your cash flow statement to make smart decisions with your money. So what is it?
All right, so I'm gonna pause right there. So the first thing, right, Pierre, in the beginning, remember you said about what you said about making smart decisions, right? So using a cash flow statement, right? And you guys could Google cash flow statements for your specific business venture if you're gonna do that. Using a cash flow statement is gonna be key, right, to measuring. Because if you don't have a statement that's documenting what's coming out, it's all in your head or some pieces of papers all over the place, right? You want to have a dedicated place where you're tracking your cash flow so that you can make wise decisions in terms of how you're going to change your business.
Cash flow is a measurement of how much money comes in and out of your business and where it comes from and goes to. When you have positive cash flow, you have more cash coming into your business than you have leaving it. So you can pay your bills and cover some other expenses. When you have negative cash flow, you're spending more than you're making. So you will run out of money to make those payments. Okay, so why does it matter? Well, if your cash flow isn't healthy, you could go out of business, even if you're making more money than you're spending overall. How does that work? Let's say you run a small web design agency. You have 3 full-time employees. They each get paid $2,500 every 2 weeks. You just signed a huge contract to redesign the website for Global Megacorp Inc., which means this year your revenue is going to double compared to last year. The only problem is you're going to run out of cash in 4 months, and your first payday from Global Megacorp isn't for another 6 months, which means you won't be able to pay your employees for 2 months, which means they're going to quit and your agency will have to shut down unless you can scrounge a loan. Theoretically, your revenue is going to double and your expenses are going to stay the same. That's great. The problem is that revenue is going to come later than you need it. That is a cash flow problem, and a cash flow statement can help keep you out of trouble. But what is a cash flow statement exactly?
All right, I'll pause there. Is everyone following what she's saying with this example about getting a big contract, but not getting the cash in time?
Yes.
Any questions about this example that she's using? My thoughts. So unlike certain businesses where you are getting the cash immediately, right? Like you're selling something and people are already paying you on the spot. In some businesses, especially as you deal with bigger companies, they'll sign a contract and say, we promise to pay you in the future. So that's what this example is talking about here, right? You were doing great, you were selling your t-shirts, and now Target's like, hey man, we'll pay you $1 million because we love your t-shirts, to get some t-shirts in Target stores. But there's going to be a cash flow crunch. They could be a cash flow crunch between the time you have to make the product and the time that Target pays you. So this is going to go into a little bit about how the cash flow.
It's a summary of how cash moved in and out of your business during a specific period. Let's see what that looks like. A cash flow statement is made up of 3 sections: cash flow from operations, cash flow from investing, and cash flow from financing. At the bottom, you get the total summary of cash flows for that time period. Each section shows how much cash entered and left your business, so you can see at a glance how healthy your cash flow was. If you're looking for a cash flow statement to use.
So I'll pause there. And this is a different kind of video. I wanted to slide back a little bit, but I'll pause there. So the last point I really want to make about the cash flow statement is having a cash flow statement could be really helpful in the event that you need to get a loan from a bank. Because if you could show that bank, hey, I have positive cash flow, right? And you would show them, hey, I also have a contract to get money from future services, right? These are things that you will put before the bank and then ask them for how much money you need to bridge that gap. Maybe you need $100,000 between May and August, right? So if they see like, oh, this person's been making enough money to actually make the payments on the loan, but they're going to come into a lot more money towards the end of the year, they'll probably just pay the loan off all in the same year. They're going to be way more likely to give you that loan. If all you had for them was your personal credit score and like you're just telling them a story about, hey man, I've been selling t-shirts, I've been doing good, if that's all you have, they're less likely. But yeah, ideally you would at least have transactions in that bank, right? They could also look at your balance in the bank and see how much money came in and went out. But having a cash flow statement is kind of a step up because that shows them the full picture of your expenses outside of what's happening in your bank account. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any thoughts on that? Any new revelations around cash flow? Because if everyone understands cash flow now, put a U in the chat for understand. Drop the letter U in the chat. All right. And the same thoughts around cash flow could also be applied personally. When you're, how much money you're personally making, how much money you're paying, That's basically a personal budget in that sense. All right, again, this full video is in the Google Class, so you guys can watch the whole video on the cash flow statement at your leisure. I just wanted to make sure to introduce it and talk through it a little bit. All right. All right, so like some best practices here, right? You want to analyze your cash flow so that way you can understand the money and how it's moving. You want to figure out whether you need to increase cash flow or if you're okay. So I'm going to all right. I'm gonna do a quick 5-minute breakout room. Gonna give you guys a cash flow challenge, and I want each breakout room to come up with some solutions on how you might be able to solve that cash flow challenge, right? And let me double check if there's slide on it. Here we go.
Wait, can you go back to the last slide?
Sure.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
No problem. Actually, I want to use a even simpler thought here. So I'm not even going to use that slide for this. I'm going to drop it in the chat. So you're selling t-shirts for $5 each. But you need to grow your business. So what are some ways that you can do that? So how can you increase the cash flow of this business? So I want you guys to ideate on how you increase the cash flow of this business. And this is just quick little practice. So it doesn't have to be a deep presentation, but thinking about what we learned today, but overall, you know, what are some ways that we can grow our business of t-shirts?
You can like when last class where we were doing the marketing, you can put it on the like advertising and stuff.
Advertising, okay. How much would you put towards advertising?
I think I'd put like 25%.
Okay. All right. Well, went with the percentage versus a hard set number. Nice move. Nice move.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, so we're doing this in the breakout room or like right now?
Oh, we started doing it now. We could just do it now since we're coming towards the end of the night.
All right.
But quick feedback, Marilena. So you want to grow your cash flow. So you're gonna do marketing to grow future cash flow, which is definitely a solid approach. Who else has another Prince suggestion for growing cash flow?
You can use the many connections you have. Either present your t-shirts to friends, family, or even the school by talking to your guidance counselor, which could also be a possibility.
So you want to, okay, so putting more work into like marketing to individuals directly. Berto?
So I came up with 4 like ways that you can increase your cash flow. So the first one is to just make the t-shirt more expensive to like
Uh-huh.
make more money. The second one is to like increase the amount of t-shirts that you actually sell. The third one would be to like do better marketing and make it more cost effective. And then the fourth one would be to lower how much it costs to actually like, make the actual t-shirt.
Man, you sound like you did this before. So yeah, Roberto touched on something that I was definitely hoping someone touched on. So increasing your price, always consider if you're priced right or if you could, price more, right? So increasing your price for your product or service is definitely something you should always consider. Hey, I've been selling these for $5. Maybe I have better shirts now, or I see the demand is really high. Maybe I'm not pricing it high enough. So that's a great suggestion. As were the others. The other one I want to call out is lowering how much it costs to get your product. That's also a very important thing. And those two things you should always be back in mind. Am I making this product or providing my service at the best cost to myself or to the business? So if it costs you $10 a t-shirt, sorry, not 10, if it costs you $2 a t-shirt, can you get them for $1 and at the same quality to make more money? Samuel.
Perhaps you could sponsor famous or well-known or popular people on social media. That way you can get as many people to learn about your product as possible.
That's also a great idea. So that's a specific form of marketing, right? Where you literally are using the social capital of a well-known person, right? So yeah, like a celebrity could be an influencer that's big and speaks to your audience. That's definitely an awesome idea, because if they're wearing a t-shirt, guess what? A lot of eyes are going to see that t-shirt, and some of those eyes are going to be like, man, that t-shirt looks like something I would wear. So definitely a solid marketing plan. Prince?
I have a question. Wouldn't getting the t-shirts a higher price would be risky to growing your business? Because I'm thinking of it in a way that you're building from down to up, that you're just starting to make t-shirts $5, you're making a decent amount of profit. I think it would be too early to change the price to higher. Maybe make a lower price and try to improvise by using online websites, or what Samuel said before in terms of having other people advertise it for you.
It really depends on the situation. It really depends on the situation. So let's do two ways. Let's do one where it's a good thing. So if you're in a place where you started, and a lot of times when we start new businesses, we don't know, let's say, what's a good price. And you started with 5, but these things are selling out, and I'm making a lot of money. You're doing this work, you're selling the shirts, $5 a piece, and you're just getting enough just to get more t-shirts, right? So that shows that, you know what, I'm not selling at the best price because I'm not actually having enough money to pay myself better or save money. I just get enough money to get more t-shirts. So you just kind of breaking even. That means that something needs to change there, and that would be a reason to need to increase your cash flow. Raising the price often is one of the first things you want to consider, especially if you have demand for it. Now, if it's $5 and nobody's buying it, then you have a different problem. So in one scenario, if it's selling well, there's demand, then raising your price might be a good thing to do. And there's many ways to go about it. Maybe you don't do it a huge jump, maybe you do it a little bit at a time. But in another scenario, if you're selling it at 5 and you raise it a little bit and people stop buying it, and then you put it back to 5 and people buy it again, well, that's telling you $5 was the maximum that your current audience will pay for your t-shirt. So it really depends. It's not a, one answer for everything. You really have to evaluate the situation. And that's where something like a SWOT analysis will come into play, understanding what's working well, what's not working well. All right, we are at the end. So I dropped the class survey in the chat. Please, please, please fill out the survey. And as always, after the survey is done, we'll be good to go. And don't forget, we have the office hours. If there's more questions on these things, I know something like cash flow, you know, potentially something that really makes more sense once you're doing it. So save the websites from the Google class, save the videos, so that way you could come back to it whenever it applies more. But yeah, I hope we all have a good understanding of cash flow from tonight.
Yes, and if I can just interject really quickly, while you guys are doing your survey, please make sure you fill out the survey completely and also provide constructive feedback. Your feedback is instrumental in you know, how we function as an organization in terms of running these classes. So whatever you want to see more of, less of, you know, that's what we want to hear, you know, hear about, right? Likewise, while it is not, and I said this last week in an email, but while it is not mandatory, we do consider everything when it comes to participation as it pertains to our recommendation or our selection for top scholar. And I just want to put that out there because it's more, I don't want to say it's more important than the fundamentals, but we scrutinize a little bit more closely than we probably would have for the fundamentals because you guys were kind of just getting in, you know, getting your feet wet. But now in the advanced, you know, we're expecting a little bit more from you. So again, while it is not required, it is strongly recommended, hint, hint, that you participate in at least one or two, if not all. Your participation is a heavy, you know, is what we grade or what we consider heavily rather, when we are considering who our top scholar will be. Just FYI for you.
All right. So go ahead.
I already finished my survey, but if there's anybody, like any professors or anybody that can help me like fix my computer, because like my thing still doesn't work, and on settings, like I turned off all the apps that are using my camera, but it's still saying that my camera is being used by other apps, and I don't know like how to fix that because I do want to have my camera on for this class.
So you're saying you reset it already?
Yeah, I've reset it multiple times, and I went on settings, and on the camera setting, I deleted most of the apps that had a camera or the apps that I needed. I just turned off the camera, but it just still doesn't work. I don't know why.
I don't know. It'll be hard to do it remotely. I don't know if do you have someone at school? Like, is there a computer class at your school or lab?
They have like IT, but like all the times I'm free, like they're not free. Like they're busy with something.
So Mary Elena, we do have laptops, and had you let us know sooner, we could have probably gotten one for you. I don't know, like, you know, if it's too late for you to receive one now, but we do have, I believe I have about one or two extra laptops that we might be able to provide if you need one, and if the issue continues to persist.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just you gotta let us know though, okay? If you need an extra laptop, yeah, send an email and let us know, okay?
All right. Also, I wanted to let you guys know that next week on Thursday, I'm not gonna be able to come into this class because I'm going to my sister's graduation.
Okay. What's next week, Thursday, Rosie? I don't have the schedule in front of me.
That's Latoya's class. So that's the last class before the final end of course session. So as long as you can speak with not speak with, but watch the recording. We do have the recording.